There's nobody better to help us get ready for the upcoming season than the man who just called all three Jets preseason games. Ian Eagle joins me today to preview the 2025 season. Locked On Jets starts now.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, September 5th, 2025, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. A big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. The Jets' regular season gets underway on Sunday when they play the Pittsburgh Steelers at MetLife Stadium. And joining me today to preview the upcoming season, Ian Eagle of CBS Sports. Ian is the Jets preseason announcer. He was on the mic for all three exhibition games, so there's nobody better to help us get ready for this 2025 season. We're going to jump into my conversation with Ian. One note before we begin, we recorded this conversation a few days ago before news broke of Elijah Vera Tucker's injury, so just keep that in mind as you listen, but I think it's going to be a great discussion and a great preview. Let's talk with Ian Eagle of CBS Sports. Joining us today is the voice of the Jets for the preseason locally on WCBS2. He'll also call games on CBS all year. Joining us for the seventh time to preview the Jets before the start of the season, Ian Eagle. Welcome back, Ian.
Oh, man, it's been seven already, John. Time flies, but that just shows you that these conversations have just mixed in nicely with my yearly preparation for the regular season, and pleasure to be on with you once again.
Well, obviously, new regime this year. What are your early impressions on Aaron Glenn?
Yeah, completely different vibe out at training camp. His personality permeated, no doubt. And then in our conversations with players that were holdovers from the previous iteration of the Jets, you could just tell it's different. When you talk to Garrett Wilson, when you talk to Sauce Gardner, when you talk to Quinnen Williams, the core group, the guys that have been paid to be a part of the present and the future, they all universally said the same thing, which is there's accountability, there's just a different pride factor around camp. And that's saying a lot. Everybody would preface it with no offense to the previous regime, and no one said Robert Saleh in particular, but that's what I took it as. And the question is whether or not that translates, because as we know, off seasons in the NFL, those are great times for franchises because you can talk positively about your team going in the right direction, about draft picks, about free agent signings. Ownership is usually feeling pretty good when they go out to see what the team looks like and what the attitude is. And then, as we know, you can get smacked in the face week one, and all that changes. All of that goodwill goes away. But Aaron Glenn in particular, very straightforward, very businesslike. I think he, as a 5'8" corner in the NFL that had individual success, built a certain toughness, exterior, and then even within. He's a tough guy. He was a tough competitor, and he's going to expect his players to be exactly the same.
See, Ian, I'm always well behaved when you're around, but on some of my shows, I have said that the Jets are the Kansas City Chiefs of the offseason based on the way things typically go from March through August. But let's move on. Justin Fields, the new quarterback for the New York Jets, off a year in Pittsburgh. Do you get the sense this is going to be a unique type of offense that's tailored towards Fields' skill set, particularly with a heavy element of design runs for the quarterback?
I think it has to be perfectly frank. I don't think Justin at this point in his career has proven that he can be high functioning in just a normal run-of-the-mill NFL offense where he's in command and can just throw the ball all over the field. That's just not who he's been. And maybe there's a day where he is that, but it's not today. So this decision was made to bring him in 2 years, $40 million, $30 million guaranteed, with the idea that they believe there's untapped potential, that they saw enough in Pittsburgh last year in the 6 games that he started and the previous stretch in Chicago, that they feel like they can tailor something for him. Realistically, his legs are still going to be the key. And if he has the kind of season on the ground that they believe he can have, then you're going to see the rushing numbers go sky high, and you're going to see the way that teams defend the Jets be completely different than what we saw 1 year ago with Aaron Rodgers at the helm. How that plays out remains to be seen. He is a dynamic runner, and the questions regarding accuracy are still there, despite the fact that his accuracy numbers, his completion numbers, have actually improved each of his 4 years in the NFL. Small sample size last year, so I'm not sure it's fair to look at 2024 and just assume that, poof, 2025 is going to be even better. But I ended up doing a bunch of Steelers games last year with Fields in there and then with Russell Wilson in there. And there was definitely a feeling from some that the offense may have been better and more unpredictable with Fields. And I thought he carried himself in the right manner. I've certainly seen maturity from the Chicago days to now, even sitting down in production meetings, and the way he handles the questions and the way that his view and lens has changed from rookie year to now. So the big question, as you laid out, is will it be productive? Will it lead to wins? And will it be a renaissance for him, a turning point in his career where he can be a legitimate quarterback in the NFL? Or is it category number 2, where you were given chances, 3 different chances, although Pittsburgh may not have been considered the greatest opportunity? It feels like Russell Wilson was promised something, and no matter what Fields did, Wilson was going to get a shot. But this is a 3rd chance now for Justin Fields, and most legitimate starting QBs in the NFL have already proven themselves by this point.
I have a question about the Jets backfield, because the last couple of years, Breece Hall has been the lead back. Aaron Glenn has made a few comments suggesting that it could be more of a split, maybe even kind of a 3-headed attack with Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis seeing an increased workload. What's your sense on the way the Jets are planning to handle their running backs this year?
Well, my sense first and foremost from Breece is he's feeling it, that there is pressure to perform, to show the Jets that he is a lead back, and there is a chip on his shoulder, and he's in year 4 and did not get re-upped like Garrett Wilson did or Sauce Gardner did. So that's real. That's legitimate. That comes from his mouth and chatting with him in the preseason. Now, the hope is that it's highly motivating and he has his best season and the Jets benefit from it. That might be the thought process behind what the Jets are doing. Or Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn, the new decision makers, looked at Breece Hall and said, is he worth that kind of money at this stage? Could they get the same kind of production with a much cheaper Braylon Allen and or Isaiah Davis? That leads to part 2 of your question. Will there be ample opportunities for others? I don't know if this is going to be go with the hot back. If Breece Hall emerges and makes a bunch of plays, and when he touches the ball is a threat to score, then the Jets are going to stick with that, in my mind. The bigger question will be what opinions were formed during the preseason. Breece still sees himself as the alpha in that room. He mentioned that he's got a really good relationship with the other running backs. It's a great room. They all like each other, but he said it is a healthy competition, and he believes he's the best running back in the room. He should believe that. I would hope that he believes that. And if we sat down with Braylon Allen, I'm sure Braylon Allen would say the same thing about himself. So maybe the Jets benefit from the fact that this is a highly motivated Breece Hall. We've certainly seen glimpses of it. And if anything, it's just been disappointing that the trajectory didn't continue. He truly is a threat. And he's got outstanding hands. He's got the ability with his footwork and his vision to make plays once he's contacted. But he's different, as we know, from Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis is probably considered, more of the all-around back. So I don't know how it's going to play out. My instinct is if Breece Hall comes out of the gate and looks like the player that we saw at different stages of his first 3 years, then he's going to get the first chance to be the guy.
Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Prize Picks. The daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. Prize Picks is quick, easy, and a great way to follow along with football. Maybe the Stuff Iron Eagles telling you today can help you figure out which Jets you should pick on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineup after your first $5 play. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Mazda offers more than safety. It's won the 2025 IIHS Top Safety Pick in awards more than anybody else as of August 2025. As an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda does the same, from metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather. You can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel, the smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda. Move and be moved. Let's talk about the pass catchers now. And I'm sure the running backs will be part of the passing game, but it's clear Garrett Wilson is the number one target. After that, though, I look at the receiver group and the tight end position. I'm not sure who's going to emerge as the number 2 guy. Is it going to be Mason Taylor, the rookie out of LSU? Is it going to be Josh Reynolds? Maybe Lazard, somebody else? Who do you think is like the second option now behind Garrett Wilson?
I think a healthy Alan Lazard would probably be the top candidate. I'm not completely sure with his shoulder because the Jets have been very tight-lipped. But to me, that makes the most sense, that he's someone that they trust in not just what he does catching the ball, but blocking and doing the right things at that position. And he brings a different skill set than the one that Garrett Wilson brings. It's a bigger target, bigger body, 6'5", 227. Arian Smith, to me, is more potentially in that speedster role of working the sidelines and deep balls. I don't know if he's ready to be a number 2 NFL receiver right now. And then Josh Reynolds, who had a nice career and certainly brings experience and knows about this offense based on his days in Detroit. He may end up getting more run than maybe even he anticipated when he signed this deal, just based on need and based on the fact that he has experience in his 9th year in the NFL. He's on a 1-year, $2.75 million deal. It's not as if they signed Josh Reynolds with the idea that he was going to be the number 2 wide receiver for this team. Lazard is getting paid, and when this new regime had to make a decision on him financially, what the hit would look like on the cap, and then where he fit in, obviously they determined that they were going to keep him. So to me, just logic would dictate if Lazard is healthy, then Lazard will get the first crack at it.
I think if you look at the skill group for the Jets, there are a lot of question marks. And that means that this team on offense is going to have to lean quite a bit on its offensive line. Now, the good
Yep.
news, I think, is the interior looks pretty solid. I thought John Simpson had a good year last year. Elijah Vera Tucker finally stayed healthy. Joe Tippmann looks like he belongs. I know they've been talking about
Yep.
like a competition with Josh Myers, but I'm assuming Tippmann's taking the job. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But the real question mark are the two tackles. Back-to-back first-round picks at the position. Olu Fashanu, who started last year as a backup, took over when Tyron Smith got injured, and I thought played pretty well down the stretch before he got injured himself. And Armand Membou, the first-round pick this year out of Missouri. What are the Jets expecting these two tackles to be able to do this year? How high level of a play are they expecting early in the season and then as the season progresses?
Yeah, they're expecting both of them to carry their own weight, no doubt about it. They committed resources, as we know, to improving this line. First round pick last year, different regime, first round pick this year, 7th overall. So they recognized that it was an area that they needed to get better. Fashanu, anybody you talk to says he carries himself like a savvy veteran. Nobody seems worried about that spot. And Membou, to be honest, until the preseason finale, where he just had a couple of mistakes, actually had done a solid enough job in training camp for them to believe that they were going to be okay. They're not that deep, certainly at that tackle position. Max Mitchell is the swing tackle. He's a former 4th-round pick. And then Chukwuma Okorafor, who was out of football basically last year when it didn't work out with New England, is the other tackle and has starting experience, but got beat out in Pittsburgh, got beat out in New England. So the plan is for the young guys to do it. No doubt they feel much better about the interior of the line. Josh Myers, if Tippmann had to play left guard with a Simpson injury, Myers can step in, play center. They're very comfortable with it. They believe that that was a legitimate battle in camp. That part is a non-negotiable. That line has to be better. Their running game has to be better. Their protection for Justin Fields has to be very good. If you look at the numbers since he's been in the league, nobody at that position has held on to the ball longer than Justin Fields. And, that's a byproduct of a lot of things. One, starting as a rookie, not playing in front of a very good line. And then 2, running opportunities. You hold on to the ball to wait and see whether or not one of those holes opens up and that you've got the vision to grab the angle and turn it into a 7-yard gain or even a bigger gain than that. So I understand you can't look at those numbers inside a vacuum, but those are the numbers, which means you better protect for this guy.
Let's talk about the defensive line because I think there are lots of interesting questions there. From what I understand, Will McDonald has bulked up this year. McDonald had an excellent season as a pass rusher last year. Question with him is run defense. And, a stronger McDonald, maybe he can hold the point of attack better. You have Jermaine Johnson, who had a Pro Bowl 2023, a lost 2024 when he suffered an Achilles injury week 2. Quinnen Williams, I thought, had a bit of a down year last year, but the Jets are looking to bounce back. And then the Jets also made a couple trades at defensive tackle during training camp. So a couple of new faces coming in, Harrison Phillips and Jawan Briggs. Where do we go with this defensive line? Where do you think the expectations are for the unit this year?
Well, I think the move that Muji made, the 2 moves, spoke volumes that they weren't happy with the players that they brought in during the offseason, that they could really step in and do the job. Jay Tufele is someone that they're comfortable with in a backup role. And then Leonard Taylor makes the team. But they didn't feel confident that they had the right mix up front. Needed a legitimate run stuffer, a leader, someone who's done it. And that's why Harrison Phillips is here. I don't know a lot about Jawan Briggs. He's obviously a big dude. And whenever I asked anybody about him, the first thing they said, he's really strong, which, okay, that's great. How he fits in here, I'm not sure. Does he become a rotation guy? Is he active on Sundays or not? But the biggest key was Phillips, and I think making sure that Quinnen Williams was comfortable with his line mate up front. And I've talked to Harrison Phillips in the past. Really impressive, leadership skills, smart guy, productive. You're getting him at 29 years old. And obviously, Minnesota had determined that he was not going to start. And that's why he was expendable. But for the Jets, it feels like it's a really good fit. The Jermaine Johnson situation, obviously no one knows until you're out there coming back from an Achilles injury, but all reports have been very positive. Aaron Glenn has gone out of his way in 2 of our meetings to make sure that he mentioned Johnson and how impressed he is with him. And then I think the McDonald part, look, the way it works in the NFL, you need to have a perfect storm oftentimes when you have the ability, but you have to be put in the position to use that ability, and you have to be coached to best find the skills that are consistently successful. And there seems to be a feeling that they've got the right coaches in place to help teach Will McDonald what it is to be not just a pass rusher, but someone that can do a bunch of other things in setting the edge and using the explosive physical talent that he has to become a better run stopper and a more complete defensive end. So if you and I are talking next year and he's made a Pro Bowl, that means that they've done all the right things to take advantage of what he has to offer.
Our episode of Locked On Jets today is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order, these players deliver when it matters most. Let's break it down. For the Jets, Sauce Gardner has delivered in a big way. Sauce has been a first-team All-Pro in 2 of his 3 NFL seasons. When the pressure's on, Sauce came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance is not a fluke. You can't be a first-team All-Pro twice in 3 years unless you're on a streak. And just like Sauce Gardner delivered for the Jets, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th.
And we've been, as I mentioned earlier, we've been doing this for 7 years, and we've talked about a lot of Jets teams that had shaky personnel, but one position where I feel like we've always felt pretty confident was linebacker, because the Jets had C.J. Mosley all those years.
Yeah.
And one of the big surprises last year, one of the few pleasant surprises for the Jets last year, was Jamie and Sherwood emerging as a starter after Mosley got injured. He's playing next to Quincy Williams, who enters the final year of his contract, but a year removed from a first-team All-Pro berth. I think that this linebacker group, once again, looks really solid for the Jets. I think this is not a position I have a lot of questions about. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, and it's funny. I remember our conversation, I think it was from 2 years ago, when we started talking about the linebackers, and Jamie and Sherwood's name came up, and we just didn't know a whole lot about him. And I just unloaded whatever I had on him. And I do remember Robert Saleh at some point in one of our preseason production meetings looking me in the eye when I asked him about Sherwood and said, no, this guy's the real deal. He's going to be a tremendous player in this league. And there was nothing that you could look at on tape because he hadn't done anything yet. He was injured, as we know, torn Achilles in his rookie year. And then it's been slow as he was trying to figure out how to play the position. He was a safety in college. The previous regime seemed to like the idea of taking safeties and turning them into linebackers. And the reality is he was highly impressive last year. He did learn a great deal from C.J. Mosley. The natural leadership, he's quiet, but I think he's come out of his shell. Obviously, when you get paid like he did, there's a belief from the organization, and then it changes the way you're viewed in the locker room as well. So Yeah, I'm with you. I think between him and Quincy Williams, they're well covered. The fact that Marcelino McCrary Ball was voted as a captain on special teams shows you that there's a respect level for what he brings. And if he was pressed into duty, maybe there's a trust that he could also get the job done. They addressed it in the draft with a linebacker in Mawanoa, and then picked up one off waivers, Cam Jones, a special teams guy with Kansas City. So I don't think that's an area that any Jet fan would be seriously concerned with right now.
Let's talk about cornerback. Sauce Gardner, a new contract, and I think maybe a new responsibility because I think Aaron Glenn's defense is going to work a lot differently than Robert Sala's did. I think Glenn is going to blitz more, which will leave Sauce one-on-one more frequently.
Yeah.
Really interesting signing, I thought, Brandon Stevens during this offseason from Baltimore. I was surprised with the contract he got, but we'll see what this coaching staff can do with him. And then Michael Carter II, who I thought had a bit of a down year last year, but seemed like he was kind of playing through some injuries. But I think there's going to be a lot on this corner group this year because of the scheme that they're switching to. This is going to be a scheme that I think depends on corners more than Robert Sala's did. So what can you tell us about this group?
Yeah, no doubt. I think you're on it. I think what was really refreshing was sitting down with Sauce Gardner and seeing him smile again. Last year, it was very sullen. And I think he knew that they had gone as far as they could go in terms of the scheme and his role in it, and the fact that there was a little shine off of what he had done his first 2 years in the NFL. So the team didn't believe that. They paid him and gave him the amount of money that you see when you're considered elite at your position. 4 years, $120.4 million for Sauce Gardner. They looked at last year as an exception and probably a product of the system that he was playing in. And I think he knows that and feels it. He just talked about turnovers more than anything else. And that's the one area. Look, you can be a lockdown corner and they can shy away from you. But at some point, you have to prove that you're a threat to take the ball away. And I think that's the stage of Sauce Gardner's career that he's trying to get to, where you're not just talking about a physically gifted corner that can obviously match up with any wide receiver in the NFL, but one that now becomes a menace and turns it into game-changing plays. Big thing he mentioned when we sat down with him was, they want to be a defense that slams the door shut, that wins a game because they came through in a tight game down the stretch, makes a play that seals a win. And that is a big step. Detroit, if you look, their rankings were never through the roof. That's not what made Aaron Glenn such an attractive prospect as a head coach. It was his spirit. It was his aggressiveness. It was his connection with his players, getting the most out of them and challenging them. And I think that's why he's the head coach of the Jets. The secondary in particular, I don't care who you are. If you played in the NFL, there's going to be an extra sense of pride that comes into the position group that you played. It's just how it is. He was an outstanding corner, and he's going to expect Gardner and Stevens and Carter and Cisco and Adams and Oliver and Moore and Stiggers. He's going to expect all of them to come through and have their best individual seasons.
The safety group, I think, is really interesting. The Jets brought in Andre Cisco from Jacksonville, and I and my listeners can tell you that Andre Cisco could be in some trouble because I liked the signing, and whenever I like the Jets bringing in a veteran safety, it usually doesn't go well for them. So I hope I haven't cursed Andre Cisco. But Tony Adams is back. I also was really intrigued by the Malachi Moore pick. I think an interesting trio there. Do you think it's going to be Cisco and Adams as the two starters with Moore as like the third guy? It sounds like Aaron Glenn really likes Moore. So I think that we're going to see all three of these guys. Do you think that would be accurate to say?
Yeah, I would. And, he went out of his way to mention Isaiah Oliver as well. when we sat down with him, just the versatility and the fact that, they trust a bunch of guys in that slot position. Michael Carter II, by the way, who they paid large money to prior to the last season, I think also needs to bounce back. And again, could be scheme based. And he was dealing with some nagging injuries in 2024, a high ankle issue, if I remember correctly. So I just think that there's a much higher expectation for this group. The Cisco signing, I would co-sign what you said. Andre's tape is really good, and what you get when you meet with him is really good. He's just got that it factor that you look for at that position, and there's a confidence there. There's a belief. He's a great chemistry guy, apparently very funny behind the scenes, keep guys laughing, keep it light when it's needed and required, and then can go produce on the field as a thumper and someone that is aggressive and has a nose for the ball. That's one thing. I just remember it in the few games that I called that included Jacksonville, TV or radio, that he was always around the ball. And that's what the Jets are looking for. So it's an area, I believe, if the Jets were going to list their top strengths and it was anonymous and you didn't know who said what within the team, that would be an area that would be either 1 or 2 in what they believe will be a productive group.
That is all for our episode today. Thanks so much to Ian Eagle for joining us once again on this show. It's my favorite show of the year. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. It helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Enjoy your Friday. Tomorrow, we're going to have a bonus mini episode because Ian Eagle and I are not done discussing the Jets. We'll go into topics such as how Jets fans can feel optimism after the difficulty of the last couple of years and what constitutes success for the New York Jets. That's tomorrow. Ian Eagle's not done with us yet. We'll chat tomorrow on Saturday.